Alfred, who do you see when you look at me?
Who are you talking to right now?
No, not maybe. I am.
The danger.
When the mugger or the thief stops to think twice, that is fear. That is what I am.
The one who knocks.
Batman Arkham Origins. This one was developed by WB Montreal instead of Rocksteady. Millions of dollars were poured into it, and a bunch of people worked very hard to make this game happen. But it just kind of exists. There isn't really anything wrong with it. It's not terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but this is a game that's hard to love. And I know there's gonna be that one guy who's like, oh, Arkham Origins is my favorite one. Well, congratulations, freak. Nah, I'm just kidding. Like I said, the game's not bad, but next to its peers, it ends up being kind of bland and forgettable. The game was conceived as a corporate mandate to fill the gap between Arkham City and Arkham Knight, and it shows. I don't want to sound too cynical. This is a fun game. If you play Arkham Origins, you're probably gonna have a pretty good time. But there's also a chance you'll be thinking about Arkham City the entire time, and how much more elegant that game was. I'm not gonna do a hit piece on Arkham Origins. There's enough of those out there already. But it's no secret that this game was not particularly well received when it came out. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Chief among them being the bugs that plagued this game at launch. Pretty much all of which have been patched in the last decade since its release. God damn, this game is 10 years old. Even though the game is pretty much bug-free nowadays, it still feels a bit less polished overall compared to Arkham Asylum and City. I can't even count the amount of times I was gliding around Gotham, trying to grapple onto something, and it just wouldn't work. It's not something I ever thought about in Arkham City, because it's not something that ever happened in Arkham City. If there was a ledge nearby, you could grapple onto it, no questions asked. But it's so much more finicky this time around. It's something that regularly took me out of the experience. Like, come on, just grab onto the ledge, goddammit! Gameplay as a whole was largely unchanged from Arkham City, which is fine. They had a good thing going there, so there wasn't much reason to change things up too much. One of the more strange changes they made was the inclusion of a grading system, where you get a Devil May Cry style ranking based on how you perform in combat. This is a really weird inclusion to have in a Batman game, and this is more of a personal preference thing, but I've never cared much for when my video games judge me. Like, man, I survived the encounter. Isn't that good enough? You don't need to hit me with that C rank to really rub the salt into the wounds right after I barely escaped with my life. If I wanted to get a letter grade to remind me of how abysmal my performance was, I'd go back to school. Another questionable addition to the gameplay is the Dark Knight system. This has you doing all kinds of optional challenges for XP and unlockable upgrades. It's not a bad concept, and it's mostly fine. What isn't fine is how certain challenges can only be done under very specific conditions. Ones that you can easily miss and won't be able to do until your next playthrough. Specifically, I'm talking about Worst Nightmare Rank 6 Takedown Variation Challenge, which can only be done in one of 2 rooms in the entire game. I was having fun doing the Dark Knight challenges, you know? I really was. Until I hit this brick wall head on, which completely soured me on the whole system. I hate it. Whatever chucklehead came up with these challenges clearly did not communicate at all with the people designing the Predator rooms. Either that, or he's just a complete psycho that wants people to suffer. My favorite addition to the gameplay has got to be the more involved crime scene reconstructions. These existed in the other games, but they felt a lot more involved and fleshed out this time around. Searching through the timeline for clues was a really cool idea, and it adds a lot more player involvement in these scenes. It's always nice seeing the world's greatest detective, you know, actually do some detective work. The shock gloves are another very welcome addition to Batman's arsenal, and one of my favorite upgrades in any of these games. All they really do is make you punch good, but they're fun to use, and the sound design makes them real satisfying, and I'm a real big fan of the visual detail of the smoke coming off of them. So, if the name didn't make it clear enough, Arkham Origins is a prequel to the previous 2 games. It's set on the night of Christmas Eve, only 2 years into Bruce Wayne's career as Batman. Batman's early years have always interested me in how he's a wanted fugitive that has to work against the police rather than with them. This game really emphasizes the vigilante aspect of Batman. that often gets abandoned once he starts working with Jim Gordon. There's even a part of the game where you have to infiltrate the GCPD building, and you're just beating the snot out of these crooked cops. You even run into a little baby Barbara Gordon.
Cool poem box.
The fuck? Overall, I gotta say the story here is pretty unremarkable, which is a real shame coming right after Arkham City. Arkham City had a really strong story that was capped off by a really unforgettable finale. Joker just, died. So when Arkham Origins came around and announced that the main villain this time was going to be Black Mask, fans of these games were eager to see what this new team could do with this lesser-known fella. But instead, it turns out Black Mask was actually Joker all along. So yeah, it's another Batman and Joker story. As if we didn't have enough of those already. Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill do not reprise their roles this time either, which I think is fine. This game is a prequel set long before Arkham Asylum, so it makes sense that these two would sound way younger. This is probably like a decade before that game. Joker is now voiced by Troy Baker, you know, the guy who's in every video game ever, and the Batman is voiced by Sonic the Hedgehog. All around, the writing feels a lot less engaging. Arkham City seemed to have a perfect flow in the way new story beats would unfold over the course of the game, increasing the action and suspense. What's this Protocol 10 thing that Strange keeps yapping on about? Joker's dying? These kinds of questions make you want to know more. But Arkham Origins just dumps all its most important information on you in one cutscene right at the beginning. Joker, Black Mask, hired 8 assassins to kill you, and then each assassin just shows up whenever it's time for a new boss fight. The most surprising thing here is that 2 of the assassins don't even bother to show up. Deadshot and Lady Shiva are both completely optional side quests. So the assassins. Most of the boss fights in this game are fine. Nothing reaches the heights of Mr. Freeze in Arkham City, but they're all pretty solid. This might ruffle some feathers, but I think Deathstroke is probably the weakest of the bunch, which is a shame since his design here is pretty much perfect. He looks freaking awesome in this game. The fight is basically a glorified QuickTime event, and it's a shame Deathstroke has such a tiny role in the story, considering how cool he is. He shows up, you beat him, that's it. That's no more Deathstroke. Oh, he shows up once, you see him once at the end in Blackgate. Ooh. It really feels like such a waste of a cool character, man. It's disappointing. It's disappointing. I think the setting for this game was another missed opportunity. Setting the game at Christmas time had a ton of potential that went mostly unrealized. This ain't no Batman Returns, I'll tell you. It feels less like an inspired idea that had any sort of narrative importance, and more of an excuse to add snow and some Christmas lights around Gotham, so that nobody would notice all the reused assets from Arkham City. The soundtrack is killer, though, let me tell you. I love how it incorporates church and sleigh bells into the music, and does way more to reinforce the fact that it's Christmas. Far better than anything else in this game. As for the new additions to Gotham's map, they're all pretty good, especially that big bridge. You'll be crossing it several times throughout the game, and it's the most memorable location the game has to offer. I like how the game brings you back to it one last time for this huge action set piece, with Firefly causing complete mayhem on the bridge. It's a really fun boss fight and definitely a highlight of the game. I like Joker's indoor amusement park too. That was another really great set piece. But how did Joker manage to build an entire amusement park inside a hotel in like one day? How did no one notice this? How did he do that? Out of all the assassins, Bane is definitely the star of the show. His boss fights are the toughest and most involved in the game, and it's nice to see that the character was done some justice this time around after his abysmal depictions in the last 2 games. He's actually competent and threatening this time around. I mean, this dude figures out Batman as Bruce Wayne, tears up the Batcave, and fucking murders Alfred. Then Batman resuscitates Alfred back to life with his shock gloves in one of the silliest scenes imaginable. It's supposed to be this big dramatic moment, but the concept of punching someone back to life with electric fists is so absurd that it loops right back around to comedy. This plot point even comes back at Blackgate during the climax of the game, when Joker threatens to kill Gordon and himself unless Batman kills Bane. So Batman kills Bane, and then punches him back to life. This is really what we're hinging this entire game's story on? punching dudes back to life with electric gloves, then Bane takes too much venom and his brain gets broke. I can appreciate this game not only fixing Bane, but also providing a retroactive explanation for why he's such a mental defective in the other games. But, you know, why the hell would Bane agree to Joker's completely insane and nonsensical plan here? Is he stupid? The game concludes with Batman beating the hell out of Joker in a chapel with another QuickTime event. It's confirmed their worst enemies now. They're arch nemesis. You see? It's a fine way to end the game, but I've always thought the character dynamic between Batman and Joker is one that works better the more history that these two have together. Like, unless you get real creative with it, the story about Batman and Joker's first encounter is never gonna be as interesting as the one about their last. Ultimately, I can't help but feel that this just wasn't a story that needed to be told in the first place. Arkham Asylum gave plenty of context to establish these characters, and it was a fun little story that could have fit anywhere into the world of the comics. Arkham City took those characters and veered off to tell its own really great and unique story. But what does Arkham Origins really do for the series, or for Batman as a whole? We didn't need a prequel about how all these characters met. We didn't need to see Joker seduce Harley. We didn't need a watered-down retelling of Mr. Freeze's origin in Cold Cold Heart. If I wanted to see that, I could have watched Mad Love or Heart of Ice. Better versions of these stories already exist. Give me something new. If you wanted to tell the story about how Batman and Joker met, make it fresh, new, and interesting, like Telltale did. Arkham Asylum dropped you into an already established world, and it felt like there were countless adventures that had taken place in that world that we'd just never hear about. But Arkham Origins' existence just makes that world feel a whole lot smaller to me. I know I've been pretty harsh on this game, but it is fun. It's a fine game. It just failed to grip me like the others did. I'd say it's worth playing at least once, though it's not something I'm gonna be super eager to return to anytime soon. And I can see how the story might be interesting to those who aren't super knowledgeable about Batman. I'm sure everything would feel a lot more fresh the less you knew about this character going in. I think it's a bit of a shame that it's not getting ported to the Switch along with the other games. And it wasn't included in Return to Arkham either. These games are now being called the Arkham Trilogy, with Origins pretty much scrubbed away from their legacy completely. Like it or not, this game has been very much neglected. This game is like the red-headed stepchild of the Arkham games, you know? Nobody gives it any love, and I can see why. But you still have a fine game in Arkham Origins. One that's just maybe a little messier and less memorable than the others. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more. And stick around next time for when we cover Arkham Knight.